Like a day camp guardian angel, Michael Brandwein has been bestowing wisdom upon us for longer than many of our listeners have roamed the earth. How does that make you feel, Michael? The defending champion of the Day Camp Pod guests returns for a third season to defend his belt in a unique way that you've likely not experienced him before. Michael, like all of us, is supremely concerned about mental health this camp season, including our own. And he's back to share his awesome insight and perspective with us. This is the Day Camp Pod. Welcome back, my friends, to the Day Camp Podcast. This is Andy Pritikin, the director of Liberty Lake in the Philly suburbs of New Jersey.
This is Sam Thompson from Crystal Lake Park District, Crystal Lake, Illinois.
I'm Tiffany Gratton-McDuffie, founder of Purposeful Play, both in Milwaukee, Wisconsin and Chicago, Illinois.
And we are Day Camp pros dedicated to the professional development of our colleagues, discussing topics and best practices that can improve our organizations and ourselves. So, yes, we have my friend Michael Brandwein, who has presented in all 50 United States, most provinces in Canada, and 6 of the 7 continents in the world. And Michael, I did some research. I want you to know that I found a couple of camps in Antarctica. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. There's Union Glacier Camp, okay, which is open November to January because that's their summer. Okay, it's a private camp, so they might have some budget. And
You're
I'm going to
serious. This is not a joke.
Listen, Michael, we want to get you on all 7 continents. We got to get this going. Okay.
Will you come with me?
Heck yeah.
All
Heck
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go around the Bering Strait and everything. It's going to be so exciting. And then there's actually a camp called South Pole Camp, and they set up a base 10-minute walk from the actual South Pole. Right.
Wow.
It's fascinating. So I want you to know that I don't want you to think, well, I'm going to get 6 out of 7. I want you to know that
we'll go for 7.
It's in the realm of possibility.
Did you find out, do they serve popsicles as Friday afternoon treats?
They have good food. They actually talk about their food on their websites. I'm going to put the links to these camps in our show notes, by the way. Okay. They're not day camps. You can't go home to the suburbs of Chicago at night. Okay. But they are camps. All right. So anyway, back to Michael's introduction. He does staff and leadership trainings for camps throughout North America and is currently scheduling online virtual trainings for camp staffs and leadership teams, as well as in person. Okay, his incredible books, including Laser Beam Technique for bringing out the best in young people, and training terrific staff. They're tremendous. I just have to say, these my YouTube viewers right here. Okay, these are my Bibles for my people for staff training. This is Training Terrific Staff 1 and 2. Okay, and the best part of these books, Michael, to me, is that when I read them, I hear you. You're literally, it sounds like Michael Brandwein as I'm reading it. That is literally the best part of these books. And I think a lot of people, when they write, they want to write like they think an author should sound. You know what I'm saying? Yes, and you write like Michael Brandwein sounds. And so when I write, I have taken that from you. That when I write, I try to keep my voice. I don't try to sound so hoity-toity, and learned, when I can sound fun, right? Because I think that it comes through.
Amen.
Really well. All right. So Michael has also served on the national board of the ACA. He's won many awards from various sections, including the most prestigious award from the ACA New York, New Jersey section, which I was privileged to bestow upon him a few years ago. I heard a great session from Michael. I have the outline right here that he gave at ACA National about developing techniques to develop camp leadership team. It was tremendous communication one, but Sam saw an interesting one that she told me about. And I said, was that Michael Brandwein? He gave that session? So Sam, why don't you tell us about it? And then you can hand the microphone off to the big man.
Great. I attended the ACA annual meeting, and you know how we're so busy right now, and getting bus schedules done, whatever. And the one thing I hadn't thought about was my own attitude. And once again, Michael's session just clarified everything for me, put me in a whole new light going forward, and gave me some tools to keep myself on track all summer. So thank you, Michael. I thought you should share it with everyone. So
I would be happy to do that, Sam and Tiffany and Andy. I miss all of you. Thank you for listening and or watching.
With Zoom, Michael, I almost feel like, and this is, you could say this a lot, I feel like I see you more now. because of Zoom in a way, because of the conferences and
Well,
your webinars
yeah,
and stuff.
but pardon the criticism here, Andy. I know as friends we can do this, but it's just because your inattentiveness. When I'm out at the end of your driveway and I'm going, Andy, and you don't come out, so what am I supposed to do? I drive back to Chicago. If I don't get, I just don't get a chance to see you. This way, you don't have a choice. You can't go anywhere. You have to stay within the confines of that rectangle.
Captive
So
audience,
stay
it's
right
true.
there. Stay right
right.
there and
So-
listen in, please, because advice that I was given when I was very young, and then when I was older than very young, wasn't useful to me. And I just want to explain to you why. And Sam, I'm happy to explain what my approach is, and I hope it's helpful to you. I have a proverb, my favorite proverb that I ever heard, which is the one that I always answer as my very favorite a piece of philosophy when it comes to proverbial wisdom, and that is, it's hard to see the picture when we're in the frame. What that means to me is that the hardest person in the world to look at is who? It's ourselves, of course. So despite the difficulty with that, I think it's sometimes important to not look at how we're developing the leadership team, not look at what we're doing with staff and parents, but instead take a look at the way we lead ourselves. And that should be the threshold step. So I was thinking recently about how, when you see a kid in a grocery store and mom or dad are checking out with the kid and the kid wants a candy bar and is told no, and the child throws a tantrum, wants something that they can't have. And so what does the adult do? The adult says, all right, but calm down, and they usually say it very loudly, and their hands always come up like above their head, and they go, calm down. They get louder and louder, thereby demonstrating precisely how not to do this thing, the power of example, right? And it occurs to me that we're, in a way, this year very much like that little kid, because there's a lot of things we want and we can't have them. We want guidelines. We want them yesterday. We want the guidelines to be more specific, but not so specific that they interfere with the way we want to run things. We want people vaccinated. We want this, we want that. And
we want to hug our friends.
Yeah, and we're not in control of whether or not we can do that. And so it's very frustrating. Now, when I was young and I was in situations where I couldn't control things, the advice that I was given was be calm. People would recite the serenity thing, be serene about the things you can't control, take it a day at a time. And the only problem was they never told me how to do that. So I always thought this was excellent advice, but if any of you have read my books or followed my work over the years, you know that I'm a how-to guy. I don't like it when people say you should do this and you should involve these people and you should, create these kind of should. I'm all about do these three things. You can get this done by Friday. Here's how to get it done. But people didn't tell me how to be calm in that way. So what I had to do was invent my own approach to this. And what I'd like to do is very quickly share it with you. It's actually fun. That's part of the reason that I like it, because when I have fun with things and approach it with a sense of humor, it allows me to be more calm as well. And I'll share what I've discovered and hope this will be helpful to you. The real question then is how? How do we remain calm when there are things we want, when there are problems that are very difficult for us by ourselves to overcome? So I'm going to, like I hope a good teacher would, preview what the two things are that I did, and then we'll just go over them. And I'll tell you exactly how I did it. And I've shared this with hundreds of thousands of people, and I believe it can be helpful to you. So here's the two things that I do. I call step one, focus on Frank. Who's Frank? I'll tell you. Well, why can't you tell me now? Because suspense is a powerful teaching tool. And number two, better bursts. Better bursts. Okay, so let's take a look at the first one. The first one is focus on Frank. Now, in order to figure out who Frank is, I'd like you to come with me to the airport. Remember airports? I actually have not been to an airport in over 1 year, the longest period of time in my adult life. And I miss airports. And one of the reasons I miss them is not only because it allows me to come quickly to all of you, my friends, but because they are terrific laboratories for the study of relevant and applicable psychology. Let's say we're on the same United flight, and it's flight 1908, and we look up at the monitor. At that moment, all people in the world fall, I think, into two groups. The first group is what we'll call Group A. They look up at the monitor and it says canceled. Now, sometimes it says delayed. My current favorite is your guess is as good as mine. Okay, it says something like that up there. Okay, so what do people in Group A do? What they do is they fling their arms up and they go, what? Wait, what? And they start, they shriek from the back of their throat. Their armpits come up, excessive armpit disclosure all over the terminal. And they're shouting and they're yelling. The B group is a much smaller group, and they're on the same flight we are, but they look up at the monitor, they see that it's, let's say, canceled, they blow stress out of their mouth immediately without even thinking of it. They make a sound like a raspberry, and then they immediately take their dominant hand, right or left, and they slap their pocket, and they pull out of it what device? Their phone, and they immediately hit the app button for United Airlines. And they are also, while pulling luggage behind them, looking over their left and right shoulder to figure where's the customer service line. I'm probably going to have to wait half a day in that line, but I probably will have to wait maybe 2/3 of a day on the phone. But whichever I get to first, you know, that I've got two options now instead of one. So that's Group B. Now, let me ask you this question. Suppose you were, remember cruise ships, on the cruise of a lifetime, and it's unfortunately going down to the bottom of the sea. Who do you want in your life raft? Someone from Group A or Group B? I mean, I would like somebody from Group B, because the Group A person is going to go, I can't, I can't. And the Group B person is just going to look at you. They're going to make that sound again. And they're going to say, do we get a refund here? Who would we speak to about that? Because they're going to realize that they can't control that the ship is going down. What we're going to have to control is how we're going to stay alive, right? Okay. Now, when you get to baggage claim, if you finally get in an airplane and get to your destination, or you're returning home, there's another opportunity for you to do a great psychology study, because people at baggage claim, and you know, I used to fly 75,000 miles a year or more, so I'm at lots of baggage claims. And the people at baggage claim, they don't see their luggage, okay? Their underwear is now in a state they will never see again, okay? So what do? They say the same thing that the people said in the departure terminal. They say, oh, can you believe this? Can you believe this? And then they often add another phrase. What they do is they say, this happens every time, which makes me want to go up and tap them gently and lovingly on the shoulder and say, then why are we surprised? If it happens all the time, then why would we say, I can't believe this? I'll tell you what I can't believe. This is just personal. If my bags finally showed up and I unzipped it just to be sure it was mine, and I opened it up, and inside was all of my clothing as packed, only it had been removed by a United employee, washed, dried, ironed, and neatly folded and repacked better than I had packed it at the departing hotel. Then I would throw my arms over my head and I would say, I can't believe this. This is incredible. That would be worth being surprised about. But what I've discovered from observing this at airports is this. When people say, can you believe this? Or when people say, this happens all the time, I have come to believe with pseudoscientific accuracy the following, which is that I think we waste at least 30% of our energy being surprised that there's a problem in the first place. And that's energy that we could use to handle the problem, to engage in problem solving. But I think we, without thinking, waste way too much energy being surprised. And I don't get it. Like, for example, I'm talking to lots of people, I'm sure you are too, about their frustration with people in the government writing regulations for jobs they've never had for themselves. Does that sound familiar? Anyone want to raise their hand? Okay. They've never worked at a camp. Okay. Sometimes these regulations affect the operation of places they've never seen. They don't have children to go to camp. They've never gone to camp themselves. So we have two choices here. We can say, I mean, can you believe that people are sitting in the legislature? Ask me. Yes, of course I can believe it. Of course I can believe it. Sure. I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but there's such a thing called Japanese quality circles. And Japanese quality circles were a big thing in management 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I asked, why are people so excited about it? What is this? There's this new phenomena of people who own companies in Japan getting Japanese employees to get out on the factory floor, for example, and stand in a circle, hence quality circles. And what they would do was stand there, and their leadership team would ask them, so how do you folks think we could run a better operation and be more efficient but fair to you and, you know, make more money for everybody? And people told me this, and I said, well, what is the big concept? Why are people selling $1 million books and giving, and with PowerPoint and all of this? They said, that's the concept. I said, that's it? And then I said, duh. Who else would you ask how to run an operation? So am I going to be surprised that people don't ask that? Am I going to be surprised that camp directors sometimes, you know, we may think of having a panel of parents, you know, to advise other parents, but how often do we really interview them, including during the season, to say, not only how are we doing, but do you have any ideas? Is there any way we could improve communication? Who's most expert? Other than the people who we're serving, which include kids, which include our staff, which includes caretakers and parents, et cetera. I mean, look at another favorite of mine is them putting students and teachers on a school board. A big, exciting revelation, you know, even non-voting. So is there anyone listening to my voice who's shocked that requires like a big community thing, and that some people will protest against it? Who else would you have on a school board other than the people who are affected by decisions that the school board would make? Why would you have to even make a persuasive case that that might be a good idea? So let me return to my premise, and I'll tell you what I did about it. I started with this discovery that we waste about 1/3 of our energy being surprised that there's a problem in the first place. So then what I had to do is I had to figure out, how can I stop being surprised? Because it was a knee jerk. It was like, you know, hitting my knee. The doctor hits my knee. She hits it. My knee flies out. Okay. It was a reflex. How can I stop wasting time that way? So let's take a look at the word how, and remember that I have two approaches. And the first part was to use this idea of Frank. Now there's one more thing you need to understand, and then I'll bring Frank into the picture, and we'll be done with step one. And I hope it'll help you. In the Brandwein family, years ago, when our kids were very, very young, it may have even been before our second one was born, when Dave was born, we were dealing with the stress of business and relationships, and of course, being a parent. So I came up with, this won't stun you if you know me, an acronym, an abbreviation, and it was NADM. I turned to Donna, something else, you know, went wrong and caused huge stress, and she said, oh boy. But instead of being surprised, for one of the first times in my life, I said, well, that's NADM. I made it up instantly in my head. She says, what's NADM? And I said, I'm going to call this never a dull moment. NADM is never a dull moment. Now, by the way, I've presented this sometimes at conferences, and people have said, oh, you mean Murphy's Law? And I want to speedily say, I do not mean Murphy's Law. Okay, Murphy said that whatever can happen, you know, can be made bad. That's an incredibly negative way of looking at the world. NADM doesn't say that everything's going to go wrong. You know, whatever could go wrong will go wrong. It doesn't say that, and it's not true. There's a lot of, for example, NADM that is dull and also exciting and joyous, you know. But most of the NADM I pay attention to are things that wreck my day, things that get in the way. They're speed bumps, they're barriers. Do they happen every minute? No. Do they happen every hour? No. But there is NADM every day. And one part of a curriculum of an adult to teach their children is to teach kids, almost every day you have, my buddies, there's going to be some stress. There's going to be a speed bump. There's going to be something that, you know, that you want that you can't have every day. That's a part of living. And what we have to do is to decide how we respond to it. But we don't want to waste time that we could use in our response. We just need to know there's NADM. Now, this is the key thing. if you believe in your friend Michael from Chicago's Natum, then it is impossible for you to be surprised. Because never a dull moment means that this isn't a surprise. Life is filled with Natum. It's sort of like your job is to erect a house of cards. The metaphor here is to accomplish your goal, say in camp or in your personal relationship, whatever. And someone is running around all day with a broom, waiting for you to look the other way and trying to knock down those cards. Now, the great secret I made for myself was, if I could put a face on the guy holding the broom, then it would help me in not automatically and reflexing this, I can't believe, that this is happening, because Natum means you should believe that it's happening. Every day is going to be filled with these kind of moments. So when people say, well, Michael, you're very calm at this moment. How do you calm? I smile at them and I say, because I've got something you don't have. And they say, what? And I say, I've got Frank. And of course they say, who's Frank? And I say, I'm happy to explain this to you. I hope it helps you. But first you have to understand Benjamin. Not Benjamin, our younger son, but Benjamin Kubelski, because he discovered Frank. Whoa, 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 too many names here. All right, hold on. We can do this. Benjamin Kubelski, Kubelsky, became known to the world as one of the most famous entertainers in history. His name was Jack Benny. Now, younger folks may not know Jack Benny. I urge you to look him up. Please not at this moment, but look Jack Benny up, and there's lots of funny clips of Jack Benny, who was one of the most famous comedians of all time in American history. He was born Benjamin Kubelski. He was an Illinois boy like me, and he was born in a Chicago hospital, but he was from Waukegan, Illinois, which is outside of Chicago, not far, but outside. And he became famous in radio and then TV as this incredibly world famous entertainer. And he did something that all good leaders of camp do, which is develop a strong support team. He did something that other comedians who had radio shows did not figure out, but Benny figured it out. And when he transitioned to television, this is the reason he was successful, because most of the people who were famous on radio, and by the way, for younger folks, before podcasts, there was something called radio, R-A-D-I-O. You can look that up.
Well, there was TV, then there was radio.
Well, maybe in your community, but not in mine. Okay, so what Jack Benny did was develop a strong supporting cast, and with no ego, he told his writers, give them most of the funny lines. Give them the stuff that will make them very popular. Because if I have a great support staff, if I give them responsibility for carrying the show, then I can be the star too. And I'll be their head leader. But if we're all partners in this entertainment, I don't want them to have walk-on parts and set me up and then I get the joke, because other comedians did that. And Jack knew, no. The stronger my leadership team is, the better this whole operation is, and we'll win all the awards. And they did, every one of them, year after year after year. And they got all the sponsors, and they got all the acclaim, because they were such a unified team of giving and awarding responsibility to each other. One of the people he gave responsibility to, we're almost there, thank you for your patience, is this guy. Now you get to meet Frank. Now, Frank Nelson is unknown to most of you. His picture, which I'm showing here for those of you watching, is something that will be familiar to a few of you, but more of you will know him from his signature sound. Here's the setup. Frank Nelson was a member of the Jack Benny supporting cast, and what he would do was play an employee that worked every place that Jack Benny needed something from. So if Jack went to a train station, if he went to an airport, if he went to a store or a grocery store or what used to be called a department store, whoever the clerk was who worked there, it was Frank Nelson. And so the joke was that this employee worked in all of these places. And what Jack would do, say in the store, like the Walmart or the Target or something, Jack would go up and he would say, "Oh, mister." And the clerk would have his back to the camera on TV, and he would slowly turn. He was this big portly man with a thin pencil mustache, and Frank would say, "Yes." Now, some of you will know that sound because later on The Simpsons, they adopted that character. Jack would say, "Oh, mister," and Frank would respond in that way. And then he would, I'll give you an example. So Frank would be, Jack would be in a restaurant and he would say, "Oh, waiter." And Frank would turn around, "Yes." And the people watching and listening would explode because the joke was that, oh my goodness, Frank Nelson works here too. And Jack would say, "We haven't even got a menu. Now we've been waiting a half an hour. Now, what do you suggest?" And Frank would say, "Oh, I suggest you get another waiter. I can't stand you." He was rude. He would put him down. He would make him feel insignificant. And the riotous joke was that the audience would laugh even before Frank Nelson opened up his mouth, because the situation the writers, with Jack Benny's blessing, created was that no matter where you go, Frank is there to knock over your house of cards. So I decided, since he was one of the funniest characters I ever saw, if I could put Frank's face on Nadam, then I would be better prepared to deal with the fact that Frank's job every day is to mess up mine. So I started to do this. This is absolutely serious. I would roll over in bed in the morning. I'd say good morning to my beloved wife, Donna, and she'd say good morning, and we'd both be sleepy. And then I would look up at the ceiling, and I would say, just inside my head, "Good morning, Frank," because I decided to make Frank the face of all of the things that I would have to face during a day. Now, let's rehearse, okay? Let's practice. Suppose that I'm ready for a Zoom podcast, and a button on the top of my dress shirt, it's a formal one, comes off 2 minutes before I'm supposed to start. So now I look like a mess, and the button fell off. Let me ask you a question. This is review now. What was the name of the person who sewed the button on at the shirt factory? Would you say his name? Say Frank Nelson, please.
Frank Nelson.
Frank Nelson is exactly right. Okay, let me give you another example. You're at the garage, you brought your car in with a front alignment problem, and when you pull it out 4 days later, a day later than they said it would be, it not only is not fixed, but you now have a rear alignment problem that you didn't have when you brought it in. What's the name of the mechanic who was working on your car? Would you say it out loud?
Frank
Frank
Nelson.
Nelson.
Frank Nelson, that's exactly right. You send a present to your favorite niece or nephew, and according to Amazon, batteries are included. And because that young person's parents are so smart, they actually arrange for the present opening to be done on video, on FaceTime or on Zoom or something. And you're watching this adorable little kid open up the present, batteries included. Are the batteries in the box? They are not. Who packed this wonderful toy at the factory? Will you say it?
Frank
Frank
Nelson.
Good
Nelson.
old
And
Frank
what was the
Nelson.
name of the employee? Remember our canceled flight? Who ran his truck into the landing gear of the plane so that it could not take off. What was the employee's name? I'll say it with you. It was Frank. It was Frank Nelson. If you start to teach yourself that and put his face on your Nadam, then you start to be able to, instead of being surprised, expect that Frank will be there. So let me summarize. When your day gets all franked up, all you have to do is to say to yourself, I expect it, and my job is to respond to it. Now, I'm going to tell you how I taught myself to respond to it, and then I'm done. But before I do, want to wrap up part one. Remember, I said that we were going to focus on Frank, and then we need better bursts. Well, to finish this idea of Frank Nelson, and of course, you could put anyone else's face on this, but as I get older, I realize I learn better and better visually. So if you have a picture, instead of just something that's abstract, it really, really helps. Now, I know you can do this. You can ask me why. Thank you for asking. Here's why. I once gave a 2-day presentation to a bunch of school teachers. It was over 2 days. I think it was like a Thursday and a Friday, and no, it was a Friday, Saturday, because Friday was a professional development day and all the kids were out of school. So I'm standing on a stage and there's about 400 teachers, K through 12, in an auditorium. In the front row is one of those teachers, and his legs are spread out because he's right in the front row. And I'm looking down on him from the stage, and next to him apparently is his son, who wasn't in school that day. Now, no other teacher, as I recall, brought their child to the professional development day for teachers, but I guess the principal said, you know, if you need to bring your son, you can, because he had no other childcare. This boy looked to be about 10 years old. And I spoke for 3 hours that morning with breaks, and this little boy could not sit still. He knew he had to stay in the seat, but he made as imaginative a use of the seat as he possibly could. He was one of those kids that would put his arm under his shirt and would come out his sleeve, and he'd be picking at his face, and he was, you know, screwing and squirming around. He was, you know, he was Professor Squirmy, and he had, because dad was a good dad and a teacher, you know, so he had things to color and he had books to read, but mainly he was just, you know, I felt terrible because, like you, I love children. I hated that I was boring this poor kid and torturing him for 3 hours. Now it's the next day, and I'm just getting ready to start on what I think was Saturday morning. And the teacher comes up on the stage as everyone else is finding their seats. And the teacher says, Michael, I enjoyed yesterday. I don't know if you remember, but my son, and I cut him off. I said, of course. And I hope you will apologize to him from me, because I know this presentation wasn't, you know, intended for him. And I felt terrible that he had to sit through it. He said, well, he got more out of it than I expected. I said, what do you mean? I was startled by that. He said, we have a ritual in our house. My son sometimes departs for school before I do, because we live in a community where he has to take a bus. It's not important. But anyways, dad is sometimes in the shower when his son goes off to school. And they developed a ritual. This is beautiful, isn't it? Where dad would be in the shower and his son will come in the bathroom and knock on the clear glass shower door. Dad would wipe off the steam and he'd put his face into the new oval, and his son would put his face up against the glass, and dad would say, bye, buddy, have a great day. And the boy would say, bye, daddy, have a great day too. And that was this really cool ritual and connection they had every morning. I thought that was great. I couldn't for the life of me, though, figure out why this guy's telling me this. And then he said, but this morning was different. I said, how? He said, it's your fault. I said, what do you mean? He said, I made the oval in the glass. My son pressed his face against it. And he said, bye, dad. And he said, be careful. And I said to him, why? And he said, because remember, Frank's going to get you. So I always tell people, if a 10-year-old could grasp this concept, anybody can. And I really think it will be helpful to you. Now, what you need, of course, is to build some better bursts of self-communication. Better bursts means self-communication. And this is how I teach it to your staff. You know that I was going to sneak in a staff training activity in here somewhere, right? Okay, so here it is. We tell staff that listening is the most important thing leaders do, but I always tell them the most important human being to listen to is yourself. Because that's monitoring what we say to ourselves, because what we say to ourselves affects every choice we make as leaders. And no one teaches us how to do this. So then I say, staff, would you like to see something I just made up? It'll just take 30 seconds. And I think this will be helpful to you. I say, please grab a pen and any piece of paper. And I would like those of you listening and watching, I would like you to do that too, okay? And what I would like you to do is on that piece of paper, I would like you to write your legal signature. If you were signing a check or a formal document or a formal letter or something like that, what would your full name do? Now I'm going to do the same here. And you can just do this on a scrap of paper. I'm going to do the same here. If you get a check or a formal document or something from me, for those of you watching, this is what Michael Brandwein looks like. And for the rest of you can just imagine, it's just my fancy signature. I'm sure you have one too, okay? Now, we're almost done. 5 more seconds. I want you to please write your legal signature immediately under the one you just wrote. Do it again, please. Only switch hands. Now, by the way, and Andy, and Sam just chuckled, Tiffany just chuckled. When you do this in a room of your staff, they will all make this sound. All of them, 90% of them, okay? They'll all go like this. Oh, and they'll do it as a reflex. Now, what I say to them is stop, don't do it. But do talk to me about that sound you just made when you thought you were going to have to. We'll actually do it in a moment. But what was that sound? That sound was a burst of what I call self-communication. And I say burst because it happened in less than a second and we weren't in control of it. It's not like he said, wait a minute, my friend Michael from Chicago is asking me to face a challenge, do something in a different way, which we're going to have to do a lot of in a pandemic year. So in order to mentally and physically prepare myself for this challenge and problem solving, I'm going to sound like a moose deep in the forest about to give birth to a Volkswagen. No, what you did was to just knee jerk it, and everyone does that. So what I ask people to do is try writing it again. Do it now, please. Write it with your opposite hand, take your time, and listen to what you say inside of your head when you do it, because you're in charge of every syllable of it. Now, if you've already done it, do it a second time, please. It'll get better the second time. If you're listening to this in the car, you know, be careful, but you can just do this with one finger on your steering wheel, okay, from your non-dominant hand, and it will feel awkward, right? Okay. What we're saying to ourselves the first time is, this is going to be terrible. And, oh, this is, you know, this is going to be awful. And I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I'm glad nobody can see me. And I'm glad this is on Zoom. And I wouldn't want anyone, you know, looking over my shoulder. Well, when you say things like that, does that affect the outcome? Of course it does. Of course it does. So one of the questions I ask when I train your staff is, why do we do archery? Now, if they don't have archery, I use another example, but that's a very common one at day camps. And so I say, why do we do archery? Does anyone know? And they don't. Almost no one knows why we do archery, but I have my tongue firmly planted in cheek, because when I say that, I have a reason that I think we should do archery. It doesn't have to be yours. Is it really to teach kids to arch? I made that word up. Okay, why? We're good because in post-pandemic we're going to be hunting for all of our food. No. Why is it that we teach kids archery? When I was a young day camp counselor, I'll tell you the reason that I did it. It was to teach my kids self-communication. Because what I told them was, you know what, guys, when you pull that string back, what are you saying inside of your head? If you're saying, oh, it's too hard and I'm not going to hit it and it's farther than it was last time and everyone's looking at me, you won't hit the target. I mean, you might hit your foot because your arm is going to be going like this in response to all of those scary things you say inside your head. So what we're going to practice is not only how you notch the bow and not only how you bend your knees a little bit and hold your breath and where you put your eyes and your hands. What I want to practice on in this round of firing is to just say to yourself, and then I would stop and I'd say, what could you say to yourself that would help you do it? And the kids were smart. My kindergartners were smart. They'd say, I can do it, Mr. Michael. Or they'd say, I can do it better than I did last time. Or they would say, hold your breath. In other words, they would give themselves a single instruction to focus. And that was the reason, because when you master self-communication and you're sitting for a job interview, and there's 3 other people, okay, sitting on the couch in this waiting room, waiting to be interviewed as well. And you're sitting there in your best clothes and you're smiling, but you're saying to yourself, under all the sweat, you're saying to yourself, I should have never showed up here. I mean, those people look, they're clearly more experienced than I do, and their shoes are nicer than mine, and I should have done my hair a different way, and they're not going to like me, and why did I even think I could do this? When you beat up on yourself, and that's your self-communication, are you going to get that job? I think not. So I'm going to tell you 2 I made up, and then we're done. Okay. Thank you for your patience. All right. The first one I made up, this was for me and for my kids, was WAMO, W-A-M-O. And it stands for, what are my options? So when I sent on Zoom and Zoom doesn't connect, instead of saying, oh, can you believe that? Of course I can. It's Zoom. What, you're going to be surprised that Zoom doesn't connect the first 2 times? So what I do is I really do. I say in my head, I go, whammo. I say, what are my options? Okay. Sign on again. That's one option. Try a direct connection instead of the wireless. That's another option. Double check the link. Maybe this is, I'm doing a number of programs for them. Maybe this is not the right link. And I'm immediately thinking of options. But WAMO was a fun way to teach it to kids. It was a fun way, frankly, to teach it to me, because I love to have fun. And if I have fun, it's easier for me to remember. But WAMO reminded me of Frank, bashing me with the broom. And it was an easy thing to remember. And I teach my kids, what are my options? What are my options? Or what are our options? And it immediately focuses my energy on run your options. So imagine me again at O'Hare and the flight's canceled and I go whammo. So what are my options? Cell phone, customer service line, talk to somebody else, and that's one great way. I made up another one. Neither one is better than the other. You can use either of these two, both of them, or just make up your own. I sometimes say to myself STP, and that stands for solve the problem. And I've taught this to zillions of kids as well. So for example, when we show up at, let's use archery. And this is a real day camp example, because at one of the places I worked as a day camp counselor, I showed up for archery the first day and all the groups were already there. There was a scheduling mess. Our group was told we were scheduled for archery and we couldn't because the other groups were already there ahead of us. It was a mess that they made in the office. So what I did was run STP. Okay, solve the problem. And I said, okay, everybody get down. Okay, I'm going to teach you something. It's even better than archery. Okay. And I said, it's STP. That means solve the problem. So first, let's figure out what the problem is. There's people at archery. Kick them out, one of the kids said. And I said, well, we could. That may cause other problems. Some of them look bigger than Mr. Michael. Okay, their counselor sure is. Okay. Plus they have a junior counselor. So it's 2 against 1. And I teased him about that. And I said, okay, one thing we could do is to, we could be mean and say, you can't be here because we're supposed to be here. What are our other options? Options are choices that you make. And so we talked about it and we figured out the option that we picked to solve the problem was to go see Jeff. I still remember the guy's name. And he was my boss, my unit leader, they called it, a leadership team member. And we could see, could Jeff allow us to do this later, but give us some special fun thing to do now that no one got to do, which of course is what Jeff made up. And it turned out, to be fine. So what I've learned is to just substitute WAMO, WAMO, what are my options, or STP, solve the problem. And in summary, the way I'm able to do that is by immediately thinking, nice move, Frank. Way to go, Frank. Frank's having a great day. Frank doesn't take vacation. I expect it. I immediately go into some bursts of self-communication that will help me. And that's the way that I've learned to handle things. COVID, pandemic, and then the other things that will affect us every day. I hope that's helpful. And I will turn it back to you folks so that we can either talk about it or wait for Zoom to go out on us.
I definitely have some things and some thoughts, but I just want to tell a quick story that leads into talking about one of our sponsors here. So we at Liberty Lake, we hosted 100 persons Passover Seder this past Sunday, and it was very successful. And I'm very indebted to my wife for all the hard work, and she's listening to me, so that's why I'm saying that too. But on the morning after, so we were completely exhausted. I wake up in the morning after, and I start getting text messages of pictures of my 40 by 80 tent, completely crumpled up like a wet noodle because this storm had just ripped through my place. And the first thing that just like you said about this Frank thing, it's like, oh, why does it keep happening? Because actually the same exact thing happened in August with the tropical storm. This is not, and this new tent was up for 3 days, and I got that feeling of, oh, why me? Why is this? That kind of thing, and I sensed it. I sensed that I was doing that, and I think what a lot of people want to do during these moments is have somebody solve the issue for you too, right? So you're sort of like, oh, who can I go to solve it? And then I said, you know what? I've done this long enough. I think I can figure this out. What are the options? And I literally said to myself, what are the options? And I started figuring out what the options were. And then when I got to camp that morning, the first call I made was to AM Skyer, our insurance company, because all the options involve money, and it's money that you've already spent in your insurance premiums, right? And because by the way, we have a big Easter thing this weekend that we need this big tent for, so I need a rental and I got to get it here and I got to write a check and all that kind of stuff. So when Frank knocks over your house of cards, and it is a facility thing, it is more than some like, oh, unexpected thing. It's actually like, wow, your dining hall burns down or whatever, some big, giant thing like that. That's why you get insurance. And I could just say from personal experience that AM Skyer, they do come through for you in the clutch, and especially in the middle of at the beginning of spring when nobody's calling them about anything really. They were like, oh, it's great to hear you, Andy. How's it going? Oh, not so good, actually. So AM Skyer, the leading insurance company, strategic partner for many of the finest camps in America. For 101 years, AM Skyer has been supporting camps in PR, legal, health, facility management, general safety, and Frank knocking over your house cards. Okay, so experience the AM Skyer difference at amskyer.com. All right, so I know I'm sure my co-hosts have something to add to this too, but I just wanted to say a couple of things. I didn't want to interrupt. Michael's on a roll, and I'm like, man, if I interrupt Michael when he's on a roll like this, like what's going to happen? Like I don't want to knock over his house cards. Like he's not used to being interrupted in the middle of his things. So
Yes, I am.
I'll let you go. All right, I'll let you go. But yeah, I remember at the last tri-state, Michael, there was a baby in the audience. Remember that? There was literally like a crying baby. You actually picked up the baby.
Yes, I do.
He
It's
picked
not
up
the
the
first
baby.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and held
Yeah.
the baby and got it to calm down and finished. He
Yeah,
finished his
yeah.
session holding a baby.
Yeah,
Like
and I said to
literally.
myself, because it was, usually that's not a big annoyance, but it turned out to the embarrassment of mom, who was a great person, but she was embarrassed. And I wanted her to be able to be there. But I said to myself, I know who the father of that baby is.
Okay.
It's Frank Nelson.
Oh my gosh. So one of the points that you made early on in this little mini presentation, you were talking about the Japanese circles, quality circles.
Yes.
Right? And I think that this is something that happens at day camps all the time, that, like you said, it's so obvious, right? But the decision makers at a camp are like in this golden circle, the executive committee, whatever you want to call them. Like they're just this handful of people that make all these decisions, right? And then they have a middle management team, right, that they rely upon to then extract these issues and problems from the frontline people, right? So there's a disconnect between the front line and the people that ultimately make the decisions. So it is a common sense thing, but it gets screwed up constantly because those people at the front line do not get solicited on a regular basis, or in a way that their ideas and what they see are problems get funneled up to the people that could actually resolve them. And for someone that's been doing day camp for 25 years, even in my own camps, at the end of the summer or in September, I'll talk to somebody that'll say, yeah, all summer we had this problem. And I kept on telling people, but nothing got resolved. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Well, you're so busy. Is usually the answer, right? So I think that little metaphor with the Japanese quality circles, that is something that needs to happen in all day camps. There needs to be systems set up for that. So that's one thing I want to say. The other thing is, the group A and the group B, right? The complainers versus the figure it outers. Okay. I mean, how optimistic are you, Michael, in life that we can transition group A into group B? That
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Oh, I do a whole workshop. I think, Andy, you may have seen it. I may have even at one point done a component of this for your staff. I don't remember, but it's on teaching kids to be responsible and solve problems. And at the beginning of that workshop, I say, how do kids grow up in either the A group or the B group? And what I say is, because at breakfast, for example, they reach for the orange juice, if they're lucky to have that, and it spills. And so if you have an adult at the table who throws their arms up and says, oh, great, now we're really late, and becomes hysterical, they end up in the A group because that's what they see around them. The B person says, whoops, all right, orange juice spilled. All right, let's get a rag, let's clean it up, move it. We can do this, we got to really hustle now. And most of what we learned about how we get into A or B is from the models around us. I'm very optimistic that if we model it right, that kids will quickly turn around.
And I think what you're saying also, which to me really puts home the point of why this is so important, is that we got to do this to the kids, because it's harder to un-A group somebody as a fully formed adult.
Sure.
Right? If you can get them while they're young and model this, like you say, and as we know, when you're at camp, you're Michael Jordan, you're LeBron James, like they're looking up at you, and if you can be modeling that and they say, hey, he's cool and that's what he's doing, you're right. That's a big deal.
I love this concept. I think that because whenever you hear things that are really cool and like really purpose driven with solutions, there's always like the devil's advocate that sits on your shoulder. And so I think for me, one of the big ahas is that a lot of the complainers are not cognizant that there's another way, that there's something else that can be done. And oftentimes when they learn of this, the ones who really don't want that to be their default are very accepting of this idea that, wow, that is a choice. And okay, and you gave me some steps. Ooh, sweet, I can do something different. The others, though, who are just like, yeah, that sounds foo-foo. I don't want to do that. And I'm mad, so I want to complain. They're also making a choice. And so, at least I guess the reality of knowing that that's the choice that they're making and that there is another option available is very freeing. My question would be, I guess, both for staff and children, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, is when that is the default that has constantly been displayed. Like at camp, we are only around the kids for so long. So if their defaults at home and their natural environments are those things, do you have any how-tos for how they can constantly remind themselves that they can be different than what they see without, I guess, shaming, whomever it is? And I really ask that thinking of kids and their parents, or kids and coaches who do this regularly.
Yeah, well, coach is a great word, Tiffany, because that's what it is. It's coaching. If they do it in front of us, you immediately go into coaching mode. So for example, if somebody starts with the armpit disclosure and they start complaining, I say, right, there's a problem. So let's solve the problem. I model the thing that I want them to say in their head. I also like to refer back to what we did in training. I don't know if this is helpful to you. It's one more minute of stuff, but I call it do the dot. And that's how I teach it to staff. So do the dot, D-O-T, is something I made up. D is describe the problem. O is a word I made up, optionize, the word optionize, which is run your options. And T is try something, try your best choice. So Tiffany, if you came up to me, and I when I'm on follow-up trainings or consulting visits in July, I walk with the leadership team and I see this all the time. So on the walkie-talkie or on their cell phone or something, someone will call and say, the horses or whatever, or the buses aren't going to be, or whatever it is. And I see the leadership team member go to jump in there and solve it. And what I do is I say, can I do this one? And I model it for them, with their staff person, which to say, well, let's do the dot. Okay, first let's describe the problem. What do we want to happen? Okay, excellent. All right, and then I reward them for that. I say, you got it. Okay, and defining it, that's actually most of the problem solving. When you know what the problem is, it's going to be much easier to solve. So I talk them through it. Just demanding that they calm down, which is where I started with all of this, that won't work. That won't work. So I love your attitude of saying this is coachable. Of course it's coachable, but you're right. When people's default is at home, we need to teach them a different way. And that's why we say, I've often said in sessions that researchers in youth development define the word youth as being up to and including our young staff. So the age of youth is, for them, is like 24, 25, maybe even 26 years old. So camp is for staff too, of course. And we want to develop these leadership and problem solving and responsibility skills in our staff, as well as through them to our kids.
I love that. The only other quick thing I'll say is that I think my work in youth development has informed so greatly the work that I do with adult women leaders, because no matter how we describe youth, these issues don't, they transcend age, and they still exist, until 144 people are,
Absolutely.
are here. So I love this. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're so right. They're very smart. Yeah.
So Michael, this summer, our staff and our kids are going to have a lot more responsibilities with the COVID situation. How can we frame that in a positive manner? All the new things they need to do.
Well, it's a terrific opportunity because the great, and you'll see him over my shoulder. I like Fred looking over my shoulder, but the great Fred Rogers said many times in speeches and in other presentations he made to adults who work with children, he said, when children feel needed, or sometimes he would say, when children feel of value, this helps them feel positive about themselves. And he was absolutely right. When we can treat pandemic responsibilities and risk management responsibilities as part of the things that we trust even young children to do, and especially when they're older. This is terrific for their self-concept. It says we're all in this together. And so I suggest framing the hand sanitizer and the masks, keep your masks on, and the distancing, you know, and other things, but especially those are the three big ones, right? Wash hands and mask, and, you know, be careful how close you are to people. I would frame those in two new ways this summer. The first way, Sam, I would frame it is, this is one of the ways that we contribute. This is our responsibility, and we trust you to be able to do this, because otherwise we couldn't come to camp, even as staff. If we didn't know that, you know, you would keep your mask on, we can't be here. Even, you know, Mr. Andy can't be here, and he's, you know, he's the boss, but none of us could be here unless we all did our part. So that makes them feel needed, and that's not putting kids on. That's not, you know, what people sometimes call apple polishing or blowing smoke. It's absolutely true. I mean, stop and think about it. I don't hear directors saying this, but if we could not trust our children to follow the protocols, would you be able to run this summer? The answer is no. So I think we should tell them that. If we didn't think that you could do this harder stuff, we wouldn't even be able to bring you to camp. I think that's a great message. The other great message that I think is going to get skipped over, so thank you for asking this, because it gets me to put it in front of people, is I would put a sign by the hand sanitizer, for example, this is just one example, that says, washing our hands is being kind. It's two kinds of kind. It's being kind to yourself, keeping yourself healthy, and it's being kind to others. I would put up other signs that say, wearing a mask is kindness. You know, one of the debates in the United States and Canada right now about wearing masks, I know you're all aware of this, is that people say, well, I've been vaccinated, I don't have to wear a mask. Or I'm not in one of the risk groups, so I don't have to wear a mask because I'm not going to get sick. And they totally blow past that you're wearing a mask helps keep me and my family and friends that I'm going to go back to at the end of day camp, at the end of Wednesday, safe, keeps them healthy. It's very respectful of you to do things that protect me. So it's kind. So I would frame a lot of the stuff that we're currently framing as be careful, we don't want anyone to get sick. You can say that, but you see, that's this negative thing. That's, you know, be careful, otherwise we're all going to die. You know, we don't want to send that message. We all want to be kind. We all want to be kind. And the way you can be kind to yourself, and the way you can be kind to Mr. Michael, your counselor, is by we all protect each other because we love each other and we're all part of this camp community. So I think those are positive things we can do this summer that we may not have done before. And I think we should, while kids are washing their hands, you know, we would say, Tiffany, Tiff, thanks for being so kind. We would use the word kind because when you use it and tie it to a behavior, Tiffany starts to see in her mind, oh, I'm a kind person. And as I say in, you know, the last book that I wrote, when people act consistent with their self-communication, people make choices consistent with what they believe about themselves. So if our kids believe that they're kind in a credible way, they're more likely to make kind choices, not only with hand sanitizer, but whether they invite somebody to sit with them for lunch and those kinds of kind choices.
Right. And I've been giving camp tours all throughout the winter and seeing kids with their parents and watching how their kids are being so respectful and kind. And I'm seeing that this is pretty much how the parents are communicating it to their kids about being respectful and kind. So we just need to keep carrying that torch.
Yes, absolutely.
Through the summer.
Yeah.
All right. So this is starting to be a lengthy podcast, Mr. Brandwein. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to transition now to our day camp tips of the week. Okay, so the one, you can save one more golden nugget that you got, okay, because we're going to go around in a little circle. And
I don't need to. Let's let others weigh in because I've certainly had my say. I will be kind and step aside so that you can share yours. Please go ahead.
Right, well, anyway, before we get to it, I want to say that this is sponsored by CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, the fine purveyors of the best recreation solutions to keep camp going strong. Check out their website at crs4rec.com. CRS is serious about fun. And those of you that have any kind of lake or pond kind of situation, I cannot implore you more to get a water trampoline because they are just the silliest, funnest thing. Why did every person in suburbia have a little stinking trampoline in their backyard that their kids were getting hurt on for the last 25 years? Because it's fun. Okay. And you don't get hurt on a big CRS one because they're like 25, 30 feet wide and you just can't get hurt. You bounce around like a big piece of popcorn and you pull every muscle in your body if you're a 50-year-old man like me. And then you climb on down and you go on off. And it has like attachments with like slides that go down the sides and all kinds of fun stuff too. So water trampoline, CRS4rec.com. Check it out. All right. Well, my first, the tip that I thought of, because I pulled out these Michael Brandwein books, as I said earlier, Training Terrific Staff. Okay. And one of the things in the well, it might not even be in this book, Michael, frankly, it's in one of the first books I read of yours. You talked about how to make things fun, make things special. So it's campy, right? So if you're running soccer at your camp, okay, yeah, you could just roll out the balls and pick teams and play soccer, but the kids do that all the time, right? And frankly, at my camp, when we do soccer, it's 100 degrees out and it's really sunny and it's not, it's not like we're playing in the fall when most kids play soccer. It's in the middle of the summer. So you got to spice it up and make it cool. And one of the things in Michael's books was, and Mike, you could jump in on this if you want, he had the suggestion of putting multiple goals up. So it's not just the two goals that are a mile and a half away from each other,
Yes.
right? But shorten the field, okay? Go find other goals. So I took like little street hockey goals and I took lacrosse goals and I brought every stinking goal we could find and put it out on half of a soccer field. And some of them had goalies and some of them didn't. And okay, you're ready? These are your goals. These are your goals. Ready? Go, kind of thing. And it was chaotic and fun, but the kids went bananas. And I thought it was the coolest thing because it's a variation on a theme. And to me, camp should be about things you don't normally do at home. And certainly they're not doing that at soccer practice. Okay. Yeah. Your travel soccer group, well, we got to beat this team on Friday. Okay. No, they're not doing this. So, make it fun, make it silly, make it memorable, right? Have these kids come home and say, Mom, you're never going to believe what we did at soccer today. It was so fun and so cool.
It increases participation because with more goals,
yes.
and
More
especially
kids.
if you use my favorite suggestion, which is to have multiple balls, you don't just have one ball. Then more kids get their feet on it and get to kick. More people get to be goalie, which is the cool thing. And so, so kids, and there's less pressure on you when there's multiple goals. So I would be willing as a camper to step in to do it because it's not like the whole game depends on this one goal. And the last thing that I suggest is moving goals. The best goal that I ever came up with is a jump rope type thing, or just any string or rope. Two kids hold it apart, so let's say 6 feet apart. So this was being prescient of a pandemic, right? And what they do is they move along the sidelines back and forth, keeping it taut between them. So the goal is in constant motion at all times. And the real cool thing about that is that the kids have to, if you give a rope, Andy, to two kids, they're going to immediately start tug of war. But if they do that, they'll end up in one place and everyone will score on them. So what they quickly learn experientially by doing is that if they help each other and give and take, and I let you go and then I go and then you let me go and that sort of thing, then we'll be able to move quickly up and down the field and it becomes much harder to score on us, which shows you can, as always, you can take something like soccer and teach the give and take of relationships, which is far more important than any soccer skill.
Teamwork, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Nice.
All right, Sam, go for it.
Okay, so mine is Hungry Hungry Hippos. So all you need are what do they call them? Shoot, I just went blank. The scooters. So you just need a couple, gym scooters. They lay on their stomach on the scooter. You give them a laundry basket, and that's their hippo's mouth. And you release a ton of tennis balls. And so they're trying to get the most tennis balls in their laundry basket, which is upside down, trying to trap them. But every time they lift up to trap another one, they lose one. And so it is kind of one of those games that just continues on until you blow the whistle and count the balls that each person has. So better than bumper cars.
It's so good. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Quintessential Sam Thompson, ladies and gentlemen.
So my tip, which is a fun fact, is that I always come with my tips like right in the show. Like I let the show inspire my tip, which is so funny and classic Tiffany. But I love acronyms. I think they're really sticky ways to teach things. So in the midst of your trainings, in the midst of you making it through the summer, the acronyms that have been given here and any acronyms that you can come up with to push your goals forward. Like think about those, because kids will remember those much quicker, and you can use those kind of like as call to action to get them to do what you want to do. It worked wonders in my camp. But my other tip is around this idea that kindness is cool, right? And to really help kids, my camp is in an urban community, and so sometimes they think all the things are cool, talking about each other. I learned from Michael Brandwein to dump the dissing, we use that very often. And so teaching them that kindness is cool was key for us. And last summer, because of the pandemic, we created these kindness is cool boxes. And in those, when that was for the kids who were at home, and in those boxes, it included a number of games, but it also included big flashcards and words like empathy. And we had to write like what that meant and what that looked like in action. And so then on screen, we would come and like role play what empathy looked like, what it didn't look like. It wasn't sympathy, but it's empathy. And so really to get the kids to see that. Another tool that we can throw in the show notes is this Big Life Journal. Did y'all see that? They have a phenomenal Instagram with all sorts of ways to teach children about their feelings. And I know at least in Milwaukee, there's a huge push for social emotional learning to be into the curriculum of camp. And I think social emotional learning is the curriculum of camp, right? That's what we're here to teach. And we just teach it in super duper fun ways. So Big Life Journal, if you're running out of ways to teach kids empathy and life skills in a really fun way, that is an awesome resource. That's my tip.
All right, awesome. And I just want to say that if you want to get the full Brandwein effect today, then you got to check out the YouTube channel, okay? Because these all get recorded on the Go Camp Pro YouTube channel. And you can just look it up, Day Camp Podcast, Michael Brandwein, and it'll pop up there, and you get to see Mike actually holding his signs up and making those great Michael Brandwein expressions that we love. So thank you, Michael, for coming on.
My pleasure.
Your annual thing. I speak for the camp industry by saying thank you for continuing to, through the pandemic, to give us the tips that we can really take. And, you said it earlier when you were talking about how you sort of defined how you were going to, do your thing. You give us great takeaways. You really do. And that's the important thing. It's one thing to inspire somebody, but to inspire them and give them takeaways that they can take back, that's special. That's really what separates you as a workshop leader. So please, Michael, how do people get in contact you if they want to utilize your skills?
Well, I guess you can put in the show notes, but you can always reach me at mail, M-A-I-L, at michaelbrandwein.com. And books are available directly from me. That's the way to get books. And that's just at michaelbrandwein.com/store, S-T-O-R-E. So we can put those links up there. I'd appreciate it if you would check those out. If you ever have any, people send me, questions all the time about what's the most appropriate resource that would help with this particular challenge. And I love answering those. I'll get back to you instantly, and I hope that they support your great work.
And if anyone needs a reference, I'm happy to give it. The obviously, for if you have a new division leader, somebody gets elevated into a division leader role and they don't really know camp that well, but they're a great, they have a lot of teaching experience, kids experience, and all that kind of thing. Super camp supervision, is that what it's called?
Super staff supervision.
Super staff, yes. That is a quintessential leadership team book for people.
Thank you.
And how to frame that job and keeping it fun and keeping it serious and focused on what we're talking about here, which is making better people and all. I want to thank the Go Camp Pro team, AM Skyer, Commercial Recreation Specialist, for allowing us to bring this podcast to you. If you like what you hear, you should subscribe to the Day Camp Pod. Check out our show notes from this and other episodes at daycamppodcast.com, as well as contact info for the show, Michael Brandwein, and our wonderful co-hosts, Sam and Tiff. Thanks for listening and making yourself a better Day Camp Pro. We'll be back next week with a mini pod, and in 2 weeks with another full episode of the Day Camp Pod.